Hey class, I want to talk a little bit about another strategy, another active reading strategy that can help you with vocabulary. The thing we have talked about for dealing with vocabulary to this point is to basically go to the dictionary and look up the word and then paraphrase the definition that you find there. But sometimes you can figure out what a word means without going to the dictionary. And the way you do that is by using context clues within the reading. So I want to talk about, the first month of class, we've kind of focused on social sciences. We've been reading Malcolm Gladwell, and a lot of the research that he uses to support his claims comes from the social sciences. And what we're going to start to do over the next few weeks is we're going to move into the life sciences and the natural sciences. And so I want to talk about some specific strategies that can help you there. And they extend beyond this too. You'll be able to use these across the disciplines. So I want to talk a little bit about context clues. So a context clue is going to be some information in the passage that's going to help you to figure out a word, the meaning of a word without looking it up. And there are different types of context clues. So sometimes there will be, sometimes a word will simply be defined. There will be an explicit definition. These are called restatements. There may also be a synonym. So it may say like, you know, it may give a word and then give another word that means the same thing. So that's a restatement of the word. Sometimes you'll get examples or explanations of a concept or term, and sometimes you'll have antonyms or contrasting words or phrases or clauses. I'm going to show you examples of all these different types of context clues. And you probably use context clues to some degree already, just sort of naturally. Um, so and textbooks, right, which you're going to have for many of your classes, are always going to provide definitions or synonyms of new terminology, right? So if you're like reading a biology textbook, for example, this week we're going to read an excerpt about viruses from a biology textbook. You're going to see that there are going to be definitions given for a lot of the new terminology. And that'll especially be true of terms that are going to be in bold print or underlined. They're almost always going to be followed by a definition. So, and after that, sometimes you'll get examples and more information, maybe the history of the word or the concept. So just be on the lookout for that information as you read. And here, this is an example of, I just want you to get used to some common sentence structures that would like hint to you like, oh, hey, here comes a definition, right? So say I come across the word craniology, right? I may not know what that means. But craniology is the study of dry skulls. So in textbooks, is when when it has a term and then it says is, what follows is nearly always the definition of the term. So craniology is the study of dry skulls. This is another way that you may see that craniology, the study of dry skulls, right? This is a restatement of the term. It's telling you what that means in simpler words, right? So craniology, the study of dry skulls, is a branch of physical anthropology. You may see this same thing done, but in parentheses as opposed to between commas. So craniology, the study of dry skulls, is a branch of physical anthropology. And then the last way you may see it is sometimes it'll still be set off with commas, but it might say or. Craniology, or the study of dry skulls, or in other words, the study of dry skulls, something to that effect, is a branch of physical anthropology. So those are just some common ways that writers are going to deliver that information to you. Here's another version where actually the restatement comes in the sentence that follows the sentence where the word's used. So the young girl was very aloof. You may not know what aloof means, right? And in the next sentence, it gives you some context that might help you to figure out what aloof means. It says, she always seemed unsociable, unapproachable, and uninterested. Those words are kind of restating what it means to be aloof. To be aloof is to be kind of above or removed from a situation, to stand outside of it. Another way that, especially in the sciences, that you'll get sort of context clues is through visual aids. So, you may get a paragraph of text that explains the parts of the knee and how the knee works, right? But then you'll also get a visual restatement of it, right, or explanation of it that can really help you to see what it is that you're reading, right? So you'll see the different parts here. You have a bone, you've got the patella, you've got cartilage and ligaments, and you can see all of it working together. And that can help you to further understand what it is that you're reading. And sometimes, a picture may not be possible for whatever reason. Um, and sometimes they will give like an example or additional explanations or summaries to help you to understand an unfamiliar word. So look for examples too, which sort of make concrete. Sometimes you're reading something that sounds very theoretical, but the example may make it more concrete and more relatable and understandable. And a hint that an example is coming up is if you see phrases like such as, or for instance, or for example. These are phrases that indicate to you that there's going to be some explaining coming or some example coming that's going to help you to understand the concept that came before. So here's an example. I just want you to kind of like get a little practice at this, right? The archaeologist found different amulets, such as a rabbit's foot and bags of herb. So the question is, what is an amulet, right? If I don't know what it is, can I figure it out from the sentence, right? So it's giving you examples, such as indicates that a rabbit's foot and bags of herbs are examples of amulets. So I may not know what an amulet is, but I might know what a rabbit's foot, why somebody carries a rabbit's foot, right? I tend to know that that is kind of used as like a lucky charm, right? Um, Now I might think a bag of herbs could also be medicine, right? But I definitely know a rabbit's foot's not medicine. So, and I know a bag of herbs is not a body part. So I can kind of eliminate C for sure. And I think I can eliminate B because I know a rabbit's foot isn't medicine, which means a bag of herbs must be another sort of lucky charm or fetish, right? Um, so that's a way in which I can use the examples to help to understand the word. Another type of clue, another type of context clue that you may come across is a contrast clue. So sometimes they'll give the opposite meaning of something, or they'll contrast a concept with its opposite. Okay, and you'll find that certain kind of connectors or transition words are going to always signal that contrast for you. Words such as but or however or on the other hand. Um, and here's a list of some of those signal words. I just mentioned a few of them. Other ones such as although or in contrast or instead or unlike would also be words that would signal or indicate contrast. And here's a few examples, right? So one of the dinner guests succumbed to the temptation to have a second piece of cake. I may not know what succumbed mean, right? But the others resisted. Now, I know what resisted means, right? It means that people didn't do something. So, since but indicates contrast, indicates opposite, right? If I know that others resisted, I know that this person must not have resisted, right? So, succumbed must mean something to that effect, right? Um, and you'll see this in a couple of different ways. Here's but, here's however. It's the same concept here. I just wanted you to see it a few different ways. Although one of the dinner guests succumbed to the temptation to have a second piece of cake, the others resisted, right? So all of these sentences have these contrast clues, these signal words like but, however, although, and they all have a word resisted that I know, which can help me to figure out succumbed if I didn't know succumbed. Here's a practice contrast one, right? David was very outgoing as opposed to his coy older sister. Now, I may not know what coy means, but I do know what it means to be outgoing, right? David was very outgoing as opposed to his coy older sister. So if he was outgoing, she must have been not very outgoing, right? So, if I look at A, B, and C here, excited doesn't mean not outgoing. Shy or reluctant sounds pretty good. Um, Nervous, not necessarily. That's kind of maybe the opposite. You could see that as being something like the opposite of outgoing. You might, because you're nervous, you may not be outgoing, but really to be shy or reluctant would be the opposite of outgoing. So I would go with B here, and I can figure out coy because of outgoing, right? And as opposed was the signal that this was a contrast here that I could draw. And here's just one more like example. I tried to pull another one from the sciences. So this says a growing number of scientists and clinicians are challenging the use of animal models on medical and scientific grounds. A 2006 study in JAMA concluded that, quote, patients and physicians should remain cautious about extrapolating or extending the findings of prominent animal research to the care of human disease. So if you see there where extrapolating is underlined, what I want you to see is that if you didn't know what extrapolating meant, they restate it in in a comma phrase after that. Extrapolating, then they say comma, or extending. So they're restating. They're saying here's a simpler word, right, that you may know. The findings of prominent animal research. So you should be careful about taking, findings from animal research and applying it to human disease, right? So that's an example in a scientific text of a context clue that could help you. So that's the deal with context clues, right? And so as you read, as you do the readings this week, see if you notice, because one thing that happens in the sciences is you come across a lot of terminology, a lot of scientific jargon that may be unfamiliar to you. So this is like one strategy that can help you to unpack some of it. Next week, we'll go into some other strategies, such as understanding like word parts and things like that, that also might help you to get a little bit more comfortable with the sciences. The sciences can be a little intimidating because of all the big fancy science terms. So I want to try and demystify that for you and make it not so difficult.